Coming up on Locked On Now NFL, the Vikings survive a big comeback from the Steelers on Thursday Night Football, and our Locked On NFL hosts have the keys to your teams getting a victory this weekend. This is Locked On Now NFL.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
What's up, everybody? You are listening to Locked On Now, local experts with the biggest stories across the NFL. I'm your host, Daniella Bruce, and thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. To kick things off today, the Steelers' comeback came up just short of catching the Vikings last night on Thursday Night Football.
The best performance.
Hold up.
The Minnesota Vikings jumped out to a huge lead on Thursday Night Football last night. But if you've watched these Vikings, you knew a game would never be that simple with this team. Locked On Vikings recaps the week's roller coaster, which ended in a Minnesota win.
It can never be easy, can it? The Vikings escape colossal embarrassment in this Thursday night matchup against the Steelers. They win the ultimate score 36-28. Looks like a pretty good final, right? But the Vikings screamed out to a 29-0 lead. And that seemed like it was going to be pretty good. It seemed like the Vikings were finally boat racing somebody. In the first half, it was an absolute drubbing in all three phases of the game. The return game was fantastic. The defense had the Steelers backed up to third and long a ton, just on like negative plays and sacks and stuff. And even a very cool interception by Bashaud Breeland. And offensively, they put up 300 yards in the first half. I mean, that's like just total domination, including what ended up being a 200-yard day just on the ground for Dalvin Cook, playing on a bum shoulder with a harness on. Absolute hero game from him. But then the second half happened. It was 26-0 at halftime. And then all of a sudden, the Steelers come screaming back. A couple of interceptions from a tip off of Justin Jefferson, and then KJ Osborne stumbled in a route leading to a pick. And total defensive meltdown. Bashaud Breeland went out of the game with illness. He came back in. He got cooked at the very end of the game. He was totally being picked on. And at the end of the game, suddenly, exactly like last week, they were in a 2-minute drill with the other team having no timeouts and dinking and dunking down the field because the Steelers had 2 minutes and 26 seconds when they got the ball. They ended up actually throwing end zone shots for the last 3 or 4 plays of the game. So once again, sort of a big defensive failure of letting things get caught in front of you, letting them get to the end zone. The exact same thing that the Lions did. It's just that this time they didn't complete the final play. Anthony Barr or Harrison Smith, I couldn't tell, broke up a pass to Pat Freiermuth, and the Vikings escape utter embarrassment. Remember 28-3? This was 29-0 in the third quarter. A really, really, really bad meltdown, but the W's a W, and the Vikings get to go into a little bit of a half bye here, 6-7, before they take on the Bears, probably on Monday night next week. For more on all this, you can find the Locked On Vikings podcast free on all platforms.
The Steelers mounted a comeback to make the game respectable at the end, but Pittsburgh still gave up 29 straight points to start the game. Our Locked On Steelers host tries to answer some of those questions.
The Pittsburgh Steelers wouldn't let this one just go away, but they do fall 36-28 in a loss by 8. They were down at one point 29-0. It was ugly. It was a give up game, quote unquote. But then they fought back, scoring 28 points in the second half. Still just not enough in the end. But the bottom line is that the Steelers have a lot to do on their long week ahead. I will say this, the Steelers fighting through this game, they somehow turned things around even without TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, who got hurt in this game. A bizarre game against the Minnesota Vikings. Ben Roethlisberger looked like if he could play like the way he did in the second half for the rest of the season, maybe the Steelers would have a chance. But the Steelers offensive line crumbling at all the worst times. Kendrick Green looked like he was shell-shocked. That and so many other issues came up in this game that need to be addressed in the Steelers' long week before their next game against the Titans. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Tune in. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube for a full breakdown of this game with Jenna Harner of Channel 11 WPXI.
And now we'll look ahead to your team's keys to victory over the weekend, and we'll start with our biggest game.
The biggest game.
The Monday night matchup between the Rams and Cardinals will feature a pair of franchise quarterbacks, and Locked On Cardinals says keeping Kyler Murray safe while making Matthew Stafford uncomfortable is the formula to win.
The West could pretty much be won on Monday Night Football. It's a showdown between the Arizona Cardinals and Los Angeles Rams. And the Cardinals, they won the first meeting handily earlier this season, week 3 of the NFL season. Can they do it again? Can they take care of business at State Farm Stadium? Alex, Bo Brock, I got to imagine the biggest key to victory is repeating what they did all the way back earlier in the season and making Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford uncomfortable.
Absolutely. It's the antithesis for what the Cardinals need to do on offense. It's per Matthew Stafford and make sure Kyler Murray is protected. This is a big game for the offensive line because they have the firepower to bring massive athletic gentlemen at Kyler Murray to try and punish him behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, namely Aaron Donald, etc. Protect Kyler, get after Matthew Stafford, and the rest should fall into place for another Arizona Cardinals victory.
Cardinals win, they'd take a commanding 3-game lead in the division over the Rams. It'd be huge. Can't wait for it. Monday Night Football. It's going down. Bo Brock, Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals.
While everyone may be tuning in on Monday night to watch Stafford and Kyler air it out in Arizona, our Locked On Rams host says the run game can help the Rams stay close in the NFC West.
The biggest key to victory for the Los Angeles Rams entering this Week 14 pivotal matchup between the Rams, the Cardinals on Monday Night Football. Run the football. I'm Sosa Kremenjas, your host of the Locked On Rams podcast. And it's as simple as it gets for the Rams this week. They need to run the football. You look back to last week, Sony Michel, the running back, won in place of Darrell Henderson, who's still sort of nursing a thigh injury. We don't exactly know his status going into this game. Ran the football 24 times. The Rams came out with a completely different offensive package. A lot of 12, 13 personnel, jumbo packages, 6+ offensive linemen. You look at the Arizona Cardinals, they rank third last in rushing yards per attempt allowed, as in the third most, and they rank dead last in explosive run percentage allowed, both stats from PFF. The one spot they are weak is at stopping the run, and the Rams seem to be transitioning into a power run game this week. Hand the ball off to Sony Michel, limit the turnovers, and that will certainly help this team put together a clean performance on Monday Night Football. To hear more about it, well, listen to the Locked On Rams podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Aaron Rodgers owns the Chicago Bears. And in Green Bay on Sunday night, Chicago will visit its least favorite rival, looking for revenge and to retake ownership. Locked On Packers tells us more on how Green Bay's quarterback keeps the Bears at bay.
Start fast. That's the key for the Green Bay Packers against the Chicago Bears. I'm Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers, and there is a question from some about the Packers' ability to come off a bye and play sharp. 0-2 in the regular season under Matt LaFleur off a bye, but they're 2-0 in the playoffs with 2 impressive offensive performances against the Seahawks and the Rams in the divisional round each of the last 2 seasons. Green Bay comes into this game on Sunday against their rival Chicago, a 13-point favorite via Bet Online, which means they should win this football game. But coming off the bye week, is there rust? Are they a little out of sorts to start? If they start slowly, you allow an inferior team to stick around to gain confidence. And because it is a rivalry spot, they're going to be a little extra juiced for this one. If you come out, you get a 7-point lead, even a 10-point lead, no matter who the quarterback is, Andy Dalton or Justin Fields, that might just be enough to put this one away.
Coming up, we've got more of the biggest keys to victory around the NFL this weekend. You're listening to Locked On Now NFL. I'm your host, Daniella Bruce, and thanks for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. Let's continue around the league with the keys to victory for our teams in Week 14.
Let's go around the league.
The Tennessee Titans are on a 2-game losing streak and trying to prove they still belong in the Super Bowl conversation. Locked On Titans says getting back on track at home against the Jaguars shouldn't be too hard as long as Tennessee holds on to the ball.
Tyler Rowland here, host of the Locked On Titans podcast, with your Tennessee Titans key to victory for a Week 14 matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Titans are coming off 2 straight losses, and they didn't play absolutely horrible in those games, but the problem was turnovers, and that's why the key to victory for the Titans is to not turn over the ball. The Titans have had 9 turnovers total in their last 2 games, 5 against the Texans, 4 against the Patriots. You could go back and look. I don't think you're going to find a lot of teams that won the game when they turned over the ball 4 times or more. So if the Titans turn over the ball against an inferior Jacksonville Jaguars team, then they're going to put that bad team in a position to win. If the Titans don't turn over the ball, though, they just have to play their football, and they should be able to come away with a double-digit win over the rival Jacksonville Jaguars. So my key to victory for the Titans in Week 14, don't turn over the ball. For more analysis, check out the Locked On Titans podcast on whatever platform you do stream. And thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day.
The Dallas Cowboys and Washington football team will meet in a The Dallas Cowboys and Washington football team meet in a big NFC East battle this weekend with playoff implications all around. After a whole bunch of games all over the calendar, Locked On Cowboys said just getting back to a normal routine could help Dallas on Sunday.
After the last 20 or so days, the Dallas Cowboys heading into their final stretch, which involves 4 of their last 5 games against divisional foes, really just need one thing to kind of get back on track. And that's a normal week of practice. Hi, I'm Landon McCool with the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and the keys for the Dallas Cowboys this week against the Washington football team is just to have a normal week of practice. They've been dealing with the shortened schedule, the Thursday games, the Thanksgiving games, the COVID issues that they've been dealing with their head coach, some players, the lineup changes. What the Cowboys desperately need more than anything is just a little bit of stability. For the first time in almost what seems like a month, the Cowboys are going to get a normal week of practice. They're playing a game on Sunday. Monday is going to be a Monday practice. Tuesday is going to be a Tuesday practice. And I think that that's a big thing for a Cowboys offense that has felt really disjointed these last few games. They have definitely shown signs of the previous form, been able to kind of turn it on at times and score points, but the consistency, the down and down out sort of solid play that we had gotten used to earlier in the season, it seems to have waned a little bit. So I really think the Cowboys, now that they are healthy, they're getting some players back on defense, which will also help on that side of the ball. But I think for the offense, now that they're healthy, they've got everyone back. Their coach should be coming back at their Thursday by the latest. You've got everyone kind of back in the building, working together. Cooper back from COVID, hopefully with a little bit more lung capacity than he had in the last game. You've got the group to work it all out, to solve the kind of consistency issues and get you back to playing the kind of football that everyone was excited about in the early part of the season. For this and more, make sure you check out the Locked On Cowboys podcast and check out the Locked On NFL podcast, and we will talk soon.
The LA Chargers haven't won a pair of games in a row in a long time, as Locked On Chargers will tell you, but he also has the numbers on both sides of the ball to get the Chargers a win.
Can the Chargers establish their first winning streak since Week 5? This is David Drugemeyer of the Locked On Chargers podcast, and your keys for success this week against the New York Giants on offense is to attack the linebackers in coverage, especially in the middle. Blake Martinez, Reggie Ragland, and hybrid safety linebacker Jabril Peppers have given up 50 catches on 57 targets for 457 yards. Also, run the football. The Giants are giving up 122.8 rushing yards per game and 123.3 rushing yards per game in their last 3 games. So there's a lot of opportunities to run the ball, especially if you're able to get a lead and really lean on them in the running game. You can really salt this game away. On defense, you definitely want to match up Joey Bosa over the right guard or even just on the right side as often as you can. Right guard Will Hernandez has given up 28 pressures and 6 sacks, and right tackle Nate Solder has given up 32 pressures and 4 sacks. So get Joey Bosa or your best pass rushers lined up on that right side and turn them loose. For more on this game and for more on the Chargers, please check out Locked On Chargers, your team every day.
The Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers would both like to win this weekend and get back to 500, but only one team can come out victorious. On the Atlanta side, Locked On Falcons says the key to winning is stopping the various running options in Carolina's backfield.
Stopping the run holds the key to victory for the Falcons in Week 14. I'm Aaron Freeman with Locked On Falcons. The last time the Falcons faced the Carolina Panthers back in Week 8, Carolina gashed them on the ground to the tune of over 200 rushing yards. And just like it'll be this week. They were able to do that without Christian McCaffrey in the lineup. The Falcons also struggled to stop Sam Darnold's ability to scramble, with Darnold adding 66 yards on the ground, including 51 on scrambles alone. If keeping Darnold's mobility in check was a problem for the Falcons, it won't get any easier now that they're facing Cam Newton, who's back in the fold as the Panthers' starting quarterback. If the Falcons can shut down the Panthers' ground game, whether that's the legs of Newton or running back Chuba Hubbard, they should be able to keep a struggling Panthers passing attack in check, and that will put themselves in a great position to win on Sunday. For more coverage of the Falcons-Panthers matchup, follow Locked On Falcons, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And that's a wrap for us today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. For more on the National Football League and your local team, make your second listens Locked On NFL and your team's local podcast. I'm Daniella Bruce, and this has been Locked On Now.